kind of, we're going to go into that in a minute. I mean, he's been prepared for something. He's been prepared for this moment, and God has been bringing him to this point to where he's ready to lead, and he's just sharing that from his heart. You know, he's not making this stuff up. So Saul hears it, and Saul, this is another crazy thing. So I mean, you're sitting there, you're the king, you got your army, shepherd boy says a few things, and the next thing you know, all right, go ahead, he said, and may the Lord be with you. So he hears the story and he says, go for it. He's like, you know, go for it. Sounds good. Best idea we've had 40 days. And again, there's question marks, and you're just kind of like, how does this happen? You know, how does this even happen? How does a shepherd boy walk into the army and the next thing he is going out? Well, a couple things. Obviously, we know God is sovereign. God had a plan. God had a plan for David, and this is what was supposed to happen. But what was the deal with the army? What was the deal with Saul? What was their biggest problem? What was the thing that was holding them back? The biggest thing, I think, in this whole story is the fact that they were fearful. Amen. They were fearful, and when you allow yourself to be, that's the only explanation if you think about it. Trained army, what was going on? That fear will cripple and paralyze us. Amen. They were paralyzed. They were so afraid that they couldn't move. They were so afraid they couldn't even think of a plan. They were crippled. They were paralyzed in their fear. And that fear is a weird thing. It's a weird thing, fear. Ever been like really scared to that point where you're just, oh, why can I not move? I'm scared of heights. Really scared of them. And Dawn and I went on this high adventure course thing. It was like this high ropes thing. And I was like, in front of my youth group, there was like 20 kids there and my wife. We all signed up. I was like gung-ho. I'm the one that got everybody signed up for it. And we get up there and I'm looking at this stuff and it's like 40 feet up in the trees and I'm like, there is no way in the world I'm doing that. You know, I was so scared. And Dawn's like, climbing out doing it. I'm like, oh. She's doing it. I have to do it. So we went through this whole thing, and we get to this one section, and there's all these different weird things you got to do. Like one was, you know, you're 40 feet up in the trees, and you're walking on a rope, and then you've got 2 ropes you can hang on, but they're all like loose. So you're just you're doing this whole thing. That was freaky. But the one that really got me was we got to this. It's 40 feet up, and you're on a little round platform about like this wide that goes around a tree. And we're harnessed in. Okay, we're not like free falling here. We're harnessed in. But I'm still scared to death. And there's this section where you've got to jump. It was like this. It wasn't a jump. It was like that. But it was freaky, right? There's no tension on the rope, you're free. But I got there, and Dawn goes first, and she's just like, you know, it was literally a step. It was like that. And I'm standing there, and standing there, and standing there, and standing there, and I'm just like, this is so terrifying. Like, I can't move. I couldn't, if you've maybe been there, I could not get my foot to lift off the dumb thing. And I just knew I was going straight down to the ground. It was just fear. I took my guys, I coached basketball at Foothill High School, and a couple of weeks ago I take them on a camping trip. And just build relationships with them, have a good time. And we went up to our camp, and we were playing some basketball. We did a big barbecue on the beach and had a bunch of really good food, and they love it, and we just have a blast. Well, I had come up with this idea that I was going to scare them. Yeah, I was going to have fun. Just long-lasting memories that they'll never forget, right? And so we have this Bigfoot suit that we bought for camp last year. It's this giant Bigfoot. It's like can go up to 7'6". And so I had some college students who helped us with our ministry that they were going to come up meet me at 11:30. Long story short, they were going to meet me at 11:30 to do this big scare. We were going to be up in this field. one of the girls was going to come running out with dirt on her face, just like, running out from the woods. And then Bigfoot was going to come out, running after him. And all my guys were going to, I got some big dudes. I mean, some of them were like 6'4", 6'5". Monroe, you saw some of these guys. And they all think they're tough. And so it was going to be great. It was going to just put some fear into it. And 11:30 comes around, they're not there. 12 o'clock, midnight comes around, they don't show up. I'm like, no scream, no Bigfoot. I'm like disappointed. So we head back to the cabin, we're playing some games, and all of a sudden, it's about 12:45, almost 1 in the morning now, and I was getting tired, and I'm like, well, I'm kind of glad they didn't come, because then we'd probably be up later. And we were playing games, we had the cabin door open, and it was loud, and we were like, talking. All of a sudden, we hear this blood-curdling, like, help me, just this screaming, echoing through the woods. And it startled me because I thought we were done with all that. And it was hilarious. Like as it was going, like my initial reaction was pretty good, which worked well for the guys. But once it was going, like I knew it was them. And I'm like, oh, they did come like a little late. And so slowly, like all the guys are just the conversation got quieter and quieter until everyone was just listening to this. It went on for like 20 seconds. And these guys, you should have seen the looks on their faces, was just classic. I mean, it was sheer terror. Because it sounded really bad. It sounded like someone was dying. And their eyes are this big, and they're looking at me, and I'm like, guys, stay here. I'm going to go check this out. So, I was going to be like the manly. So my buddy, my assistant coach was with me, and we go out and close the door, and we're just like laughing, like this is awesome, and we got to find him now. Long story short, they had been looking for us for like an hour and missed us through the camp. I had some incompetent help. And all of a sudden, their car goes flying down the road and turns onto 44 and heads, and is gone. And I'm like, what are they doing? They just screamed one time and they left. They drove 45 minutes up to camp and screamed and leave. I come back to the cabin after 15, 20 minutes of trying to call, get a hold of them. Finally found out that one of them had to work early, so they were just like, we can't be here anymore. We're gonna go. Like, all right, it's just a scream, I guess. I go back to the cabin and we're walking up to it. We've been gone for 15 minutes. It's silent, the lights are out. And I go to open the door and I flip on the light, and these guys, like a couple of them are hiding in the corners. One of them has a hatchet. It's like this. 3 of them have like fishing knives like this size. And I'm like, oh man. But their eyes were this big around, and they were just freaking out. 3 of them had their bags packed. It was crazy. And as we talk through it later, here's the thing. If you ever meet any of these guys, they don't know. They still don't know that this was planned. We never told them anything. So they still think, well, we didn't see anything. We went out there, there was nothing there. So the legend has grown in their mind. I've had a couple parents call me and go, okay, I know that wasn't real. Like, how'd you pull that off? But as we talked with the kids, a lot of them have talked about how like at 15 minutes we were gone. They were really scared. And some of them like froze up and were just like, packing their stuff and like weren't moving. Others of them were like making plans. Okay, well, like if this happens, we need to do this. And there was one that was like, hey, has anybody got anything like on your heart you need to, like he was ready to confess his sins. And like anybody want to get anything off their chest? The point is that like there is something crazy about fear. I mean, fear just cripples us. It paralyzes us. It makes us do things that we're afraid to even step out and move. And so when I think about like what's the explanation for this? Like this army, you've got a whole army. You got this guy taunting you for 40 days. Fear had crippled, paralyzed them. It freezes us, and it keeps us from being able to accomplish what God really wants.
That's right. Amen.
I want to read a little bit out of this book. It's one of my favorite books. I try to read it often. I mean, there's just so many good things in there. It's called The Next Generation Leader, and it's by Andy Stanley. I encourage you guys to read it if you've never read it. But There's a couple things I want to read out of here. One of them that says, courage is essential to leadership because the first person to step out in a new direction is viewed as a leader. Being the first to step out requires courage. In this way, courage establishes leadership. You know, I had to look back to the little obstacle course. I mean, Dawn stepped out and did it before me, and I was like, you know what, if she can do it, I can do it. And it's true. If she wouldn't have done it, I was seriously scared out of my mind to do it and did not, I wanted off. You know, like, I want off. She established leadership in that she stepped out and did it. And David did this. It's really interesting to think about in the story, like with David, how this whole little thing with Goliath propels him into like his future of what God had planned for him. Preparing him to be king, preparing him for leadership, preparing him for the things ahead of him. And if he would have sat in fear, like everyone else, then this opportunity may never have happened. If you look at verse 30, go to verse 37 of the story, right? So Saul says, all right, go ahead, may the Lord be with you. So then, listen what happens. Saul gave David his own armor. So Saul's kind of like, you know what, I'm going to help you out here. Good. You're looking pretty weak, and you're probably going to get jacked up. So, here you go. Here's a bronze helmet, a coat of mail. David put it on, strapped the sword over it, took a step or two to see what it was like. For he'd never worn such things before. I can't go in these, he protested to Saul. I'm not used to them. So David took them off again and picked up 5 smooth stones from a stream and put them into a shepherd's bag. Then, armed with the shepherd's staff and a sling, he started across the valley to fight Goliath. Okay, still just an amazing thing. Like if you're in the army or one of the trained military, wouldn't you kind of feel like sissy a little bit? Like, you know, man, you go do it. You're not even trained and you got some rocks. Goliath walked out towards David with his shield bared ahead of him, sneering in contempt at this ruddy-faced boy. Am I a dog, he roared at David, that you come at me with a stick? And he cursed David by the names of his gods. Come over here and I'll give your flesh to the birds and the wild animals, Goliath yelled. David replied to the Philistine, you come to me with a sword, spear, and javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of the heaven's armies, the God of the armies of Israel whom you defied. Today the Lord will conquer you, will kill you and cut off your head. I will cut off your head. And then I will give your dead body, I will give the dead bodies of your men to the birds and wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. And everyone assembled here will know that the Lord rescues his people, but not with sword and spear. This is the Lord's battle. He will give you to us. As Goliath moved closer to attack, David quickly ran out to meet him. Reaching into his shepherd's bag, taking out a stone, he hurled it with a sling and hit the Philistine in the forehead. The stone sank in and Goliath stumbled and fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with only a sling and a stone. He had no sword. It's just an amazing story. And you look through the Old Testament and God was instructing kings and leaders to be courageous throughout the Old Testament. Throughout the Bible, you find God instructing these kings and leaders to lead courageously. Whether it was Esther or Joshua, Gideon, Moses, have courage. It's not going to be easy. It looks like it can't be done. It looks like there's no chance for this to happen. You're crazy. But these men and women were given opportunities in their face, opportunities to step up and be leaders for change, to make a change. And the key word for them is courage instead of fear. And in this story of David, it just seems like one of the greatest single acts of courage. You know, when you really look at all the stories by a young guy named David who was ready to make a difference. And was gifted. He was a gifted leader. He was gifted and ready to go. I mean, just some of, like, even his little charge right there that he speaks in those final, verse 46. I will conquer the things that he says. He's just ready. He's been prepared.